Hey everyone, it's Justin. Thank you for watching and welcome to my house. That's Justin's house. In this video, I've got one more behind the scenes video. We're going to talk about my integrations with OpenAI, where I pull an image from DALL-E like you see there right beside me. And if you've watched those videos, the other fun part was the poems that were coming in. And this is something I added on at the last minute, especially for Connor, because I had a feeling he'd probably seen this image stuff before and I really wanted to surprise him. And GPT3 had just come out like the week before I was scheduled to record, so I was like, hey, I should be able to repurpose what I've already done and then have it generate a poem, because they were able to do things like song lyrics and stuff like that. So what I did is I came in and I created another action. You can see that other action in my workflow. In a previous video, I'll put a link up above to the previous video, but I kind of stepped through this request the image and how I was requesting that image from the REST integration. So in this video, I want to talk about this query, the DaVinci model. The DaVinci model is what they call the text DaVinci model for this particular way to talk to the OpenAI. And I did actually a script for the action. So the action requires a text prompt, right? What are you asking the AI? And I said, basically, I want to write a short poem about space and then take that description I was getting from the catalog item where they were putting in like, show me a dog playing in outer space with a flying pizza and all that stuff. So I wanted to attach that and just to prepend it with, write a short poem about whatever they said in that box and then return it. That way I'm just using the same thing they did, and then the poem should be similar to what the image is, right? So that's the custom action for the DaVinci model. So if we look at the action itself, there's two steps to this one. The first step, or the inputs, are the text prompt, which you just saw in the workflow. The second step is to make that REST query. So again, we're going to api.openai.com/v1, but instead of the generate image endpoint, I think it was the word I was looking for in the last video, we're going to use this /completions endpoint, and I'm going to pass my application/JSON as my content type, my bearer token as my authorization. But in the body text, my model is now text DaVinci 03, which is the new model that came out. My prompt is the input prompt that we just got up here in the inputs, so I'm using that by here. The max token size, this is basically the way OpenAI is structured and the way that they offer you free tokens, and then you use up the tokens as you use the API, and then you can buy more tokens. That's how they make money. You would make money in this if you were like making an app and generating lots of poems or lots of images, like you see some apps doing in the iPhone, or not Apple and Google Play stores. So tokens is basically saying, hey, you could return me a poem that's 10 lines long or 100 lines long. I don't know how I got to this 2048 number. Somehow I got to that number, and it was a decent sized poem that didn't take a long time to read. The temperature when you're dealing with OpenAI is basically how wild or innovative, crazy you want it to be. Like, do you want it to be, and I still can't remember, you'll have to go look at OpenAI's documentation. 0.9 was somewhere around the, do some fun stuff for me, but trying to stay out of crazy land. Is what I understood that temperature level to be. But you can go from 0.1, I think, all the way to 0.9 or 1. I think is the 0 to 1 is the spectrum there. And then the number of responses to generate was 1. So that did its work. And then this time I got to use my JSON parser step, which is a step you can use, or a step within your action you can use that's out of the box, right? So you don't have to write any scripts. All I had to do was take some sample response code from that OpenAI query and paste it into here, and then it generates this object over here on the right hand side that's not too much behind my head, so let's shrink it up here. It's basically saying, hey, I see there's a root node, which is this guy that's starting with number 1, that has everything in it, and underneath that root node we've got ID object created model, and then I've got another array of choices, and I've got another object for usage. So you can see that there. Here's the array of choices. In my example, there's only one choice being returned, and I've kind of hard-coded into that REST query that you saw there. I'm only asking for one poem, and then this usage is just a usage object. So I was able to just use this button to generate the target. It generated that over here on the right-hand side automatically for me. That was the extent of the work as part of that. And then I just say, hey, for the outputs, I want you to have an output called DaVinci response. Let's go ahead and edit this. So my output's going to be called DaVinci response, and it's going to be an object because that REST query and that JSON parser step are returning an object to whatever calls that action. So if I exit edit mode, I was able to just go here. Let me move my head out of the way. I was able here to go to the JSON parser step and say, hey, take that root object and click and drag and drop it into the DaVinci response output variable. And then once that's in the output variable, I now have it in my flow. So if you look right after my query DaVinci model, I have a for loop. In theory, there could have been more than one, right? I could have had more than one. And also that object is kind of structured that way. So in the for loop, I go and set the flow variable image underscore poem to the value of the text that's inside that object. Now, I did some concatenation here. Here's a short poem about the requested image, space, and then appended, concatenated the text that was returned from the AI, so that when you look at this in the notes here, it looks a little prettier rather than there just being a poem with no explanation. Now it says, here's a short poem about the requested image, and then there's the text, a honey badger in a bowler hat, ... So that was the extent of the integration for the poem part of it. And I'll tell you, when I did the image part of this, it didn't take that long for me to figure out the interface and get everything connected. Maybe, let's say, an hour tops. To do this DaVinci model, I did it while I was watching TV. So I shared this with you to show that this stuff is not that hard. It's actually pretty straightforward. It's pretty well documented on how to do these things, how to do things, simple things like concatenation that you see there, how to use that JSON parser step. And I think you can go away and do something really cool by having AI generate something useful for your business, useful for your application, useful for your workflow, maybe even something like marketing where you saw there. I'm not sure what you could use a poem for other than to entertain people on YouTube like we did here. But having said that, I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please like, please subscribe, or share it with somebody who you think might be interested in integrating artificial intelligence with ServiceNow and having a little fun. Until next time, don't forget to always be learning.